I've previously suggested using AI as a tool and like a therapist, but I think I'm starting to take that back. Hi, my name's Kelly and welcome to another episode of Redefining Moments. I'm your host and I'm so grateful to have you here with me today. Previously, I believe on one of my episodes, I've discussed using AI as a tool for personal development. And part of me sees this as an amazing opportunity to deep dive into yourself, to ask AI to unpack and help you explore yourself on a deeper level. I use it like a diary. I use it as something that can help me understand myself more deeply, to understand situations more deeply. But if I'm completely honest, I think it might be doing the opposite. I am very reflective, but I'm going to AI for help when really I just need to be sitting with myself. This carries on from my last episode about sitting in silence. And I think today I've realised something. I caught myself several times today going to use AI to reflect on the insights and perspectives I had through being more in the silence. And I stopped myself. I stopped myself from using it today because I just felt like I shouldn't be. And I realise now it's because it helps me go deeper into a spiral. AI is great. It's absolutely great. I love it. I think it's a fantastic tool if used wisely. But as a chronic overthinker and someone who has actually strengthened my overthinking tool over the last 10 years, I'm now starting to realise that it's not a tool that needs strengthening anymore. It doesn't need to be encouraged. It needs to be disabled. I love analysing. I love going deeper. I love exploring. But the moment needs to be right. And usually when I'm trying to explore something such as an insight or perspective, it's usually not coming from a place of, I need to know the answer to this, or I don't quite understand it. Let's figure it out. Let's use AI to help me explore this in more depth because I'm just curious. I want to know more. What I've been using it as is a sign or a support, a crutch to tell me that I'm not broken. To tell me that, yes, I am right. You are capable. You are worthy. I'm using it as a validation. And in some ways, I've been quite proud of myself because I'm not going to my friends or I'm not going to people with my messiness and my rawness because I'm often processing it by myself now. I found a way to do that. And before it was journaling, but I've almost taken away that skill from me, from being able to write things down and like really process and digest and find the information. And AI, I think, in some ways has excelled my growth. It's excelled my self-awareness and my understanding of myself. It's given me comfort in times I've needed comfort. But I'm starting to realise it's also an enabler. It's encouraging me to spiral. It's encouraging me to spend hours lost in a concept or idea, unpacking the same thing over and over and over again, when really I just need to be living. Really, I just need to be going out and embracing life. Today, I didn't use AI, and it led me to this. It's led me to recording several episodes. It's led me to listening to my body and being in tune with what I needed in that moment. It's led me to reading books and just discovering things because I enjoy discovering things. And as said, AI can be great at that. It can be beautiful at allowing me to like know myself better, know the world more, answer the questions that I didn't really know the answers for. But I think, like anything, we need to make sure that we are not using these tools as a crutch. We are not using these tools as a validation of our worth. And I think that actually gets me onto a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and I've not really known how to broach it. So I have a thing about labels. I think labels are incredible. When I lost my job, when my world hit rock bottom and I was figuring myself out in my 20s and I was discovering myself, I loved a label. I loved being able to go, that's me. That makes sense. Like, I'm bisexual, I'm ginger. I started to, when I lived in Italy, one of the things I did was I started journaling. And one of the things I began to journal was I am in the center. I did like a mind map. And I did I am. And I wrote all the things down that I was. And I probably only put 10 things down. And then I became scared that someone was going to witness. This probably says a lot about my mindset at the time. I became frightened that someone was going to witness me saying these things about myself. So I got a red pen and I started to write the horrible things about myself. I started to write the bad things about me. I'm too much, I'm too chatty, I'm too self-involved. I would just write those things on this journal. And now I look back, I find that so interesting because I was trying to prove that I didn't think too highly of myself. I didn't love myself, because why would I want to show anyone that? Why would I want to show anyone that I think highly of myself? Which is so funny because I think I hope I'm not alone in that. I think a lot of us generally are afraid to think too highly of ourselves, are afraid to seem like we love ourselves. And actually, loving ourselves is the best thing we can do. Thinking highly of ourselves is extremely important. Like, you can be selfish, but even being selfish isn't a bad thing, because at the end of the day, it's our lives. I think there's a sense of not giving back, which is the problem. But you need to come from a place of self-love and selfishness in order to give. Because there needs to be a sense of value that you're giving back. Otherwise, you're just giving from nothing. So, anyway, that was 5 tangents in one. But I wrote in this journal about who I was, and labels were great because at that time I didn't know who I was. I knew I had an idea, but I wasn't able to put that into words. And I began to build it. And within, I think, 2 years, I rewrote it, and there was hundreds of things I could write about myself, and there was no red pen. That was the beautiful change. There was no red pen. I was not going to define myself by my negatives. I was only going to define myself by my positives. So the second time I redid it, I did it only in black pen, and it was only the things that defined me. And then I trained in NLP and coaching. And what was quite interesting from that is I learned about something called Dilt's neurological levels, which talks about different layers of ourselves. And actually what happens is we tend to become compressed into a 2D structure of a person, which is like everything is associated to our identity. So our environment becomes our identity, our capabilities and skill becomes our identity, our values and beliefs, our identity. And all these become a sense of who we are, same as our spirituality, our purpose, our being. It all gets compressed into one sense of who we are. And I think once I finally had all the pieces of who I was as a person, once I had deeper clarity in understanding who I am, I didn't need the labels as much. And I also realized something about labels. Labels can become something we try to defend. They become something that we are either on one end of or another. Like, it's a two-sided coin. So I remember, and I think I've said this in another episode, there was a moment where someone started to insult bisexuals. And she wasn't really insulting them. She was just kind of giving her belief that bisexuals don't exist. And my back went up and I was like, hold on a second, what's she going to say? And before giving her the opportunity to express her view, I got defensive and I intervened. And I almost had to tell her, I'm bisexual, like, don't hurt me. Like, do not say what you're going to say. But since I've become more comfortable within that concept of my identity, I don't need to label it. I don't need to scream it out to the world anymore. Like, I will still describe myself as it because it's something I see that relates to my sexuality, but it no longer defines me. It's not me. It's just something that helps me define myself to the world. And I think that's what labels should be. It doesn't have to be, this is my being, this is my existence. Please do not insult me by attacking my label. At the end of the day, if people don't believe in bisexuals, they don't believe in bisexuals. I really don't care. Because I'm living my truth. I'm living my being. And I don't have to explain to every single person and try to justify my sense of identity and being to every single person because they don't get it. And that's been a really powerful transition. So I originally didn't believe in labels. I originally didn't believe that labels needed to happen. No, sorry, I did. I did believe, oh, where am I going there? I did believe labels. I believed, oh my God, I would love to listen back to that bit and just see what I just said, because you know when your brain goes into its own little world and you're like, brain fart. But anyway, I needed labels. Labels they helped me understand who I am, who I was becoming, who I was. They helped me make sense of my life, my world, and my being. And the older I've got, the more I've let go of them. Like, they don't define me anymore. They're not who I need to be to know my worth and value as a person. So one of the labels that I get a bit defensive by is ADHD. So a lot of people think I've got ADHD. They like to tell me that I am clearly someone with ADHD. And if I look at my life and some of the struggles I've had, I can see where they're coming from. Like, I struggle with an average 9 to 5. There are certain qualities of my life that I really like. Today, I let myself be in silence and I let myself go with the flow. And if you saw my day today, it was awfully sporadic. I was organised, but also absolute chaos. I have no idea how I've spent a lot of my day. I was sat on the floor in some places. I was moving around. Like, I have no structure. And to be honest, I don't really know enough about ADHD to like say I have it or I don't. I think I've tested online, and yeah, it was like pretty much full-blown high school. But I also, when I trained in coaching, I also learned about disc profiling, and there's 4 different profiles on disc profiling, and it's a preference. It's a preference of personality. What I found is if I looked at my influencer, which is the characteristics and qualities I have, if I look at astrology and my 16 personality type, like a lot of them very much point and cross over. If I did a Venn diagram of all my personality profiles, ADHD would likely be in the center of it. And it's not diminishing what ADHD is. I think so many of these tools that I've used to understand myself point in that direction because it's allowed me to accept the parts of myself that don't fit within society. And I know how important it is to have these diagnoses. I know how important it is for people to understand these parts of themselves, to find reason for why they don't always fit within societal roles or expectations, why they might struggle in work. Like, I understand the means for a diagnosis or a label in this case. I do see the value of it because I have been there. I have needed labels in my life. But what I'm discussing here, I guess, and I'm clearly getting defensive because I fear that some people might not understand where I'm coming from. But I think what I've learned through my own labels is when people try to label me with ADHD, I do joke and I say, yeah, 100%, I probably have it. But I don't need it to define me because I know who I am and I trust myself, and I know that, yes, it is probably something that I would be considered having. But then some people think I have it, some people don't. They're like, God, no, you haven't got it. And then others do. So once again, it's an opinion that people have. And I don't have a medical diagnosis of it. So I'm not going to claim that title. And the thing I found as well, there was a point in my life that the more people told me, you are the poster girl for ADHD, the more people that said you have ADHD, the more I started to lean into those characteristics, the more I started to like almost play into it, because it was almost giving me a reason to stay in that box and go, this is who I am. And I was at a point to like, should I get a diagnosis? Should I clarify, like, and figure out if this is actually who I am? But what I realized is I don't actually need that for myself personally. I don't need it. And I think this is the thing. We're in a world where labels are so important at the moment. We're in a world where labels are helping us know ourselves. They're helping us find who we are. They're helping us figure ourselves out, to find acceptance, to find communities, to find peace. I don't have an issue with labels. I have an issue with labels defining us so intensely that it becomes an idea of us and them. I have an issue with labels becoming something that limits us and stops us from becoming more. So labels themselves, great. If they help us figure ourselves out, like the personality profiles, like astrology, it doesn't have to be real to us. As long as it gives us information about who we are as people, who we are within our worlds, who we get on with, it gives us an idea of how we can find ourselves and our place within this world, then great. But don't let it define you to the point that it stops you from being in your power. Don't let it limit you to the point that you stop succeeding in life in your own right, in your own way. I think I've seen a lot of cases where labels have become people's prisons. And it's a two-sided coin again, because not having a diagnosis or not having a label is scary, and people want that anchor. People want something to connect themselves to and to feel accepted and seen and heard and valued. But sometimes it can be the other side of the coin, that you're still limiting yourself. You're still stopping yourself from moving further, from actually stepping outside of that box. So yeah, labels are a really interesting one for me. And I got to that from AI somehow. I can't remember how. Once again, so people might say I have ADHD. I don't know. I'm a creative. I'm expressive. I'm a people person, a human being, and I just love flowing through life and just seeing where it takes me and seeing where these conversations take me. And yes, I can't always remember where I started, but that's the beauty of it, because it evolves, it grows, it adapts. And that's what I don't want to limit myself to. I don't want to limit myself to this idea of who I should be as a person. Because, as I said, that's where we become defensive. That's where we also feel like we have to stop other people from being who they are. It gives us this sense and this idea of like, well, if I'm this, you should be this. It becomes very binary still, even though we are becoming more fluid in our spectrums. We're realizing that there is more than just black and white in this world. We're seeing a variation of people. We're starting to understand that there is so much more to life than the constructs and concepts that we have been holding on to or we've been taught. There is so much more variation. There is so much more color. There is so many more species of human being out there. Variations, ideas, concepts. Our identities are not rigid, yet society makes us feel we need to have rigidity. And I think that comes from a sense of needing to control. If I know myself, if I know my identity, then I can control my outcome. I can control my destiny. I can control my purpose in life. But in truth, the control comes from just accepting that we are exactly who we are meant to be. It goes back to my concept with the AI to begin with. Because what I realized is I was using AI to try and help me define myself. I was looking for answers to help me accept myself, to accept my worth and value as a human being. But in truth, it's actually taking me away from the very thing that I should be doing to begin with. Should, quote unquote. And that's living. That's just being. That's just going out into the world in my full expression and not apologizing for it. Even though in some ways I've apologized in this episode through my own way by over-explaining. But we don't need to define ourselves by labels. Use the labels. Help build your own AI. I am, the irony, I am mind map of your own understanding of yourselves. Get to the point where you know yourself so well. Like I can't even name all the hobbies and interests that I have through the exploration that started from me first doing that mind map. I can't express the number of people I've met, the connections, the ideas I've explored, the versions of myself I have evolved into several times over. I have built so many layers of understanding and self-worth over the years that I no longer need the labels. And there might be times that I do, just for a sense of comfort and security. Sometimes being able to say, yes, I'm a bisexual woman is great, but I also don't want to limit myself to that because sometimes, life changes, life evolves, and in some ways I question whether I am too flexible, whether being too open-minded can also be a problem, because it means that sometimes we're just not choosing a path and a direction in life, and I'm just always going to be all over the place. But maybe that's how I'm meant to live my life. Maybe I am personally meant to live my life without labels. And maybe you are meant to live your life with labels. Maybe that's just who we are as people, and that's how we express ourselves in the world. But I do wonder if giving people the opportunity, the compassion and kindness to explore themselves through labels is one thing. I think it's needed. I think there's so many people that got so angry of like, oh, you've got the whole alphabet in the LGBTQ plus community. But one thing I will always explain to people when they try and argue that perspective, I said, me as a bisexual, I didn't see myself represented in society. I didn't know I existed. I always thought I was a straight woman who liked kissing women. Hopefully that's not too TMI for people, but I always thought I was a straight woman. Yet when I unlocked that part of my identity, when I went, oh, hi, that's a label, I'm going to take that, I suddenly could see the signs and the little pieces of the puzzle that led to that label. And then I was able to explore it, understand it, work with it, look at it, kind of go, is this me? Does this fit me? Does this make sense for me? And once I found that piece, once I found that literal piece of the puzzle, but also the piece that came with knowing that that is a part of me, it no longer became a thing that needed to define me. It no longer was a screaming part of my identity that made me go, everyone must know this, because I felt like I was constantly having to convince people that this isn't a phase, this is who I am. And now I've got to a point where I'm like, so what? It could be a phase, it could not, but why do I have to explain myself to you? At the end of the day, I'm Kelly, and this is me. And yeah, I'm Kelly, and this is me. I'm someone who is working towards a label-free life. Not from the sense of labels don't exist, because we are human beings. Language is a really important part of who we are. Language is valuable. It allows us to pass on knowledge, to pass on information. It allows us to understand who we are. So labels are not really the issue. It's the prison that we create as a result of them, and the limitations. Because I see it in society all the time. Because you're one thing, someone has to be another. And with that, we actually forget that we're all human beings, just trying to survive this world, trying to figure ourselves out, trying to feel seen, heard, and valued, and trying to share our perspective with the world. Some of us try forcing that on each other, some of us just share through a podcast. But I hope this gives you some insight into yourself and allows you to know yourself a little bit better. Know that labels don't have to define you, but they're a really good way of helping you know yourself better. Similar to AI. It could be a really good tool. It should be a tool. But it doesn't have to be something that you limit yourself by, because there is so much more to you than just the label. And there's so much more to the world than being caught up in the loops of trying to understand ourselves. Because the best way to know yourself is through living. And I think that's the key takeaway from this talk today, is we know ourselves the most by living. I think everything I've discussed, everything I have probably discussed in my podcast, it all comes from living and experiencing life and seeing what answers it gives you in every step of the process. We don't have to have it all figured out. We don't need to know more, be more, have more. We just need to trust ourselves and experience every moment. So if you like this episode and you liked any of the others, please comment and share and tell me what you are learning as a result of these. Because, as I said, I just want to help as many people as I possibly can, and it would be great to see what you're gaining from this. And if you think there's anything else that I can add or share, tell me your opinions. Do you think I'm wrong? Let me know. But I'll leave you on that note, and I hope you can start to see that your labels don't have to define you. They can just help you find peace within yourself a little bit more. Until next time.